Nash Caldwell had always believed he understood Juniper better than anyone. After 5 years of marriage filled with joy, challenges, and shared dreams, he was confident in their bond. He could still recall the moment he proposed, the way her eyes lit up as she said yes. They had built a life together, certain of their future. But that night, as they sat at the kitchen table with the television murmuring in the background, Juniper spoke words that shattered his sense of certainty. With the same ease one might use to discuss the weather or a new restaurant, she casually mentioned she had plans to go out with a co-worker on Friday. Nash blinked, waiting for her to add something that would make the statement less jarring, but she simply reached for another piece of bread, calmly spreading butter across its surface as if nothing was out of the ordinary. He needed a moment to process, to convince himself he had misheard or that she was joking. Yet the way she avoided his gaze, keeping her focus on her plate, sent an uneasy feeling crawling up his spine. "What?" he asked, his voice remarkably steady despite the turmoil within him. Juniper finally looked up, and for the first time Nash noticed something unsettling, a careful calculation in her expression, as if she'd been anticipating this exact reaction. "It's just dinner." "It doesn't change anything between us," she said lightly, her tone far too casual. "I love you. This doesn't affect our marriage." Nash studied her, searching for a crack in her composure, but she appeared completely at ease, as though she truly believed this was normal. His fork lay untouched on his plate, his appetite gone, his pulse hammering in his chest. Yet he refused to let her see the impact of her words. Juniper likely expected anger, an explosion of emotion, an ultimatum, but Nash wasn't that predictable. If there was one thing he had mastered, it was restraint when it mattered. Taking a slow breath, he exhaled deliberately, his mind already made up. If this was a game, he would not be the one to lose. A small, almost indifferent smile curved his lips as he lifted his glass for a sip of water. "I see," he murmured. Juniper's breathing hitched, barely noticeable, but enough for Nash to catch. That alone confirmed his suspicion. She wasn't seeking permission. She was searching for a reaction. The silence between them stretched. Juniper feigned nonchalance, poking her food, but Nash watched her with unwavering patience. "Well," he continued, keeping his tone light, "maybe I should go out with someone too, just to see what it's like for the first time." Juniper's composed mask slipped. Uncertainty flickered across her face. Her fingers steadied moments before now trembled slightly as she gripped her fork. She blinked rapidly, processing his unexpected response. "You met someone?" she asked, striving for indifference but failing. Nash merely shrugged. "There's a woman at the gym I talk to a lot. Might be interesting to go out with her sometime." Color drained from Juniper's face. The shift in power was almost tangible, and Nash hadn't even begun playing in earnest. A thick silence fell between them. The confidence with which she had proposed this idea now wavered. Her fork hovered motionlessly above her plate. The certainty she had displayed mere minutes ago was gone, replaced by something else, hesitation. Nash leaned back in his chair, the picture of ease. Inside, he felt a cool satisfaction, watching Juniper experience the same doubt she had so casually handed him. "Oh," she muttered, trying to regain control. "I see." She looked away, nudging her food absently. But Nash saw the way her legs shifted beneath the table, a nervous tic she was trying to conceal. "Is that a problem?" he asked, his voice smooth. Juniper let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Of course not. I just wasn't expecting that from you." He raised an eyebrow. "Funny," he said, folding his arms. "I wasn't expecting this from you this time." She didn't laugh. His words had landed exactly as intended, cutting through her forced lightness. She tried to recover, lifting her chin and speaking with affected ease. "So, who is this woman at the gym?" Nash smiled inwardly. He had anticipated that question. More importantly, he recognized what it meant. Juniper was no longer masking her interest. Before, she had framed this conversation as a modern, open concept to explore together, free from emotion. Now, the mere mention of another woman had her on the defensive. "I'm not sure it matters," he replied, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "If it doesn't change anything between us, I don't see why details are necessary." Juniper laughed again, though tension lined her face. So it's real. You're actually going out with her. Nash tilted his head slightly, observing her reaction. You're the one who suggested we explore this, right? She opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time that evening, Juniper was speechless. The air between them was thick with unspoken truths. The confidence she had displayed when setting this plan into motion was now slipping away. This was no longer a test of Nash's reaction. It had become something entirely different, something she hadn't foreseen. Nash had seen all he needed to see. He already had his answer. Juniper had never expected him to go along with this. And more importantly, she now realized she stood to lose something she had always taken for granted. Without another word, Nash finished his water, placed the glass down, and rose from the table. Good night, Juniper. She remained seated, watching him leave with a distant expression. And in that moment, Nash knew the power had shifted. In the days that followed, everything between them changed. The house, once filled with easy conversation and familiar routines, now carried a weighty silence. Nash carried on as if unaffected, following his usual schedule, leaving for work and returning at the same time each evening. But the unspoken tension between them lingered louder than any argument ever could. In the beginning, Juniper brushed it off as just a phase. She convinced herself that Nash was only pretending to be indifferent, trying to make her back down. But as time passed, it became clear that he wasn't pretending. If anything, he grew more distant and unpredictable. The first moment of true unease struck her on a Wednesday morning. She was sipping her coffee when she noticed Nash standing in front of the hallway mirror fixing his collar. It wasn't the first time she'd seen him do this, but something about the way he checked himself over, ran a hand through his hair, and examined his reflection twice felt different. Then he picked up his phone and smiled. A strange tightness formed in Juniper's chest. For the first time, she felt a fear she had never associated with Nash before. The fear of losing him. She attempted to push the feeling aside, but the image of him at the mirror haunted her all day. Who was messaging him? Had he actually met someone else? That evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, she tried to sound casual. You seem happier lately. Nash didn't take his eyes off the screen. He simply smiled slightly. Do I? She crossed her legs, forcing a light tone. Yeah, like you've been busy. This time, he turned to look at her, his gaze assessing. It was as if he were measuring her words, deciding how much she truly understood. Then, in a calm voice, he responded, Yeah, I guess I've been using my time better. A shiver ran down Juniper's spine. Over the next few days, she watched Nash more closely. His phone lit up with more messages. His morning run started earlier. One evening, he came home from work and went straight to the shower, humming a tune she didn't recognize. Then on Friday morning, as they sat at breakfast, he casually mentioned, I'm going out tonight. Juniper's hand froze with her coffee cup midway to her lips. Oh, she worked to keep her voice neutral. With who? He didn't hesitate. That woman from the gym. It felt like a punch to the stomach. Her mind raced for something to say, a way to redirect the conversation, to regain control, but there was nothing to be said. Nash was simply following the very rules she had set in motion, and suddenly, she wasn't sure she wanted to play anymore. That night, while Nash got ready without a care, wearing a shirt she barely remembered, his cologne lingering in the air, Juniper felt the full weight of her actions. He didn't ask about her plans, didn't show the slightest concern over her supposed date with a co-worker. It was then that she realized the cruel truth. She had never intended for this to be real. She had wanted to test him, to make him question himself. But now she was the one filled with uncertainty. She couldn't bring herself to leave the house. Messages from her co-worker went unanswered. Instead, she paced the living room, staring at her phone, waiting for Nash to message her, waiting for him to come home early, waiting for this to all be a joke he'd decide to abandon at the last moment. But Nash didn't message. He didn't return early. When he finally walked to the door after 3 a.m, he was utterly calm, as if nothing had happened. Juniper sat frozen on the couch, eyes locked onto him. How was it? She asked, her voice weaker than she intended. He removed his jacket, draped it over a chair, and met her gaze with unsettling neutrality. It was good. Those 3 words were like a dagger to her heart. Desperation clawed at her, but she didn't know what to say. She wanted details, wanted to say it meant nothing, that it had been a mistake. But Nash wasn't apologizing, nor was he hiding anything. And perhaps that was the most terrifying part. Without another word, he walked to their bedroom, leaving her sitting there, her heart pounding in the unbearable silence. The next morning, Juniper awoke with a heaviness in her chest she had never felt before. Genuine fear. Fear that Nash had changed. Fear that she had started something she could never undo. When she entered the kitchen, she found him drinking coffee, scrolling through his phone as if the world hadn't just shifted overnight. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her presence. She cleared her throat, forcing a light tone. "You got home late." "I did," he replied simply without looking up. His indifference only tightened the knot in her stomach. She pulled out a chair, watching him, searching his face for hesitation, for any sign that this was still a game. But Nash wasn't pretending. He was simply done. "Nash," she whispered, her voice betraying her vulnerability. "What are we doing?" He finally lifted his gaze, studying her for a long moment. Then, with a calmness that sent a chill down her spine, he asked, "You tell me. After all, this was your idea, wasn't it?" A lump formed in her throat. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." Nash let out a quiet laugh, one that held no amusement. "What did you expect? That I'd beg you to change your mind?" She tried to speak, but he continued. "I've been thinking a lot, Juniper, about what it means that you suggested this in the first place. About what that says about our marriage." Her heart pounded. "Nash, I made a mistake, okay?" He didn't flinch. "You did." A silence stretched between them, thick with all the words she wanted to take back. She wanted to tell him it was all just a mistake, that she never should have suggested something so reckless. But deep down, she knew it was too late. Nash stood up, rinsed his coffee cup in the sink, and turned back to her with a final, devastating sentence. "Thank you for showing me who you really are." Then he walked out of the kitchen. Juniper sat frozen, the panic in her chest growing unbearable. A few minutes later, when she found the courage to enter the bedroom, she saw them, the divorce papers. Signed. Her world shattered in an instant. She leaned against the doorframe, watching in horror as Nash pulled his suitcase from the closet. The sound of the zipper slicing through the silence made it all feel terrifyingly real. Driven by sheer desperation, she stepped forward. "Nash, please." Her voice wavered. She forced a smile, but it came out wrong, like a plea. "This went too far. I forgive you for going out with her. Let's just forget about everything. If you forget what I said about dating someone else, I'll forget what you did. We can start over." Nash paused, gripping the suitcase tightly. When he looked at her, there was no hesitation, only finality, and she realized with a sinking heart that he wasn't afraid of losing her. She was afraid of losing control. A quiet, humorless chuckle escaped him. "I don't need your forgiveness, Juniper. You've taught me something these past few days, and now I know I deserve better than this." With that, he picked up his suitcase, grabbed his keys, and walked out. The sound of the door locking behind him was the last thing Juniper heard before silence swallowed her whole.